Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. It's Thursday, January 19th, 2023. We will go back into our regular meeting. We've already did the roll for our work session. So with that being said, can we please stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Dr. Kunkel, we have already discussed the, oh no, this is number 3. It's to you, I'm sorry.
You want me to review the agenda before we get to number 3?
Either way.
Okay.
Review is after that, but you can
Okay.
do whichever one you want.
Well, let's do number 3 first. How's
Okay,
that?
go ahead.
Yeah, there's a resolution in your packet. I'm not going to read this to you, but this is School Board Appreciation Month in Ohio. There is a resolution from the governor to you all. There's also a certificate in front of you, and most importantly, there are thank you cards from our students. We value what you do each and every day. Some of these handwritings are better than mine. It's not saying much, but I had a chance to peruse through some of these. Very well done. So thank you, students and teachers that organized this. But more importantly, thank you to the school board members for everything you have done. This is a tough time to be a leader, but I do thank you, and our team thanks you for everything you guys have done. So hopefully you enjoy the thank you cards, and
Yeah.
Again, thank you.
I still have a poster in my office from Morgan a couple years ago when they did the posters. But yeah, thank you to all the principals and teachers and students. Got bingo.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks for the recognition. We'll move on to, let's review the agenda.
Yeah,
Dr.
there's
Kunkel,
really
go ahead.
three highlights tonight. The first one, there are a handful of overnight trips for your approval. We're going to approve on the agenda are 2 school calendars, one for 23-24 and then one for 24-25. And then the last highlight is a resolution to proceed with a tax levy. And there are handouts for the audience. Those are the 3 highlights for tonight.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to number 5, which is the approval, correction of the minutes. We have 2 minutes, December 15th, 2022, and then we also have our January 6th meeting. So we have 2 minutes to, board minutes to approve tonight. Could I get a first on both these minutes, please?
Motion.
Mr. Chanel, could I get a second?
Second.
Mrs. Hayes? Mrs. Logan, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Schnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter?
Yes.
Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Van Winkle?
Yes. And it looks like, did Steve leave?
Steve said the show choir at senior night.
Oh, perfect. Do we have any public participation, Mrs. Logan?
I do not see any forms.
Okay. We'll move on to the superintendent reports and recommendations. Dr. Kunkel, the floor is yours.
Yes, sir, thank you. So under my sections A through F, would any board member like to have a separate vote in items A through F?
I'd like to separate item D under the superintendent's reports.
One
which
more
is
time?
approval.
Separate E.
Separate
E. I thought you said
D.
D. Okay, item E will be
Oh.
separated.
I apologize.
Yep.
The paper I have says D. E,
Yep, so I
the school
gave you
calendars.
a new copy of
I
the
don't,
agenda.
I don't see hers. I know you gave it to all of us. It's the one that's stapled, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So we added the Washington DC trip to the new agenda.
Gotcha.
So Mrs. Webb, just to be clear, you want to have a separate vote on the calendars, correct?
Yes.
Yes,
Which is
E.
item E.
Letter E, yes.
So with that being said, I'd like to block items A through D and item F, and I'll just quickly review those. Item A is the Science Club is going to Ireland in June of 2024. Item B, the show choir is going to Indiana, March 4th of this year. Item C, the varsity wrestling team going to Columbus, and they're leaving tomorrow. Item D is our annual Washington DC trip, and that attachment is in your packet. And then finally, item F, there are 2 schedules for your approval. Those are items A through D
Plus F.
and F.
Perfect. can we have a first for items under superintendent reports and recommendations? Items A through D plus F. Can we have a first, please?
Motion.
Mr. Chanel, can we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Kleinfelder, does anybody have any discussion on those items they would like to talk about?
Can you,
Repeat which ones?
yes,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Do you have this stapled? Okay,
yeah,
perfect, yeah.
okay.
So it's A through D
Okay,
And
plus F. So
Okay.
skipping E.
E, that's what I missed,
Okay,
okay.
yep.
I thought F was E.
Yep, perfect. Does anybody have any discussion on A through D plus F? Nope. Could you call the roll, Mrs. Logan?
We weren't supposed to do this.
Mr. Schnell,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter,
Yes.
Mrs. Hayes,
Yes,
Mrs. Webb,
Yes.
Mr. Van Winkle.
Yes. And then we have, for the superintendent reports and recommendations, item E. Can we have a first for that approval, please?
Motion.
Mr. Chanel, can we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Kleinfelder? Okay, before that, can we have, does anyone have any open dialogue they would like to talk about with item E, which is the approval of the school calendars, which is 2023 and 24, and 2024 and 25? Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I have a couple comments to make. One being, both of these calendars start, at least to me and the feedback that I receive in the community, extremely early. There used to be the argument that we start earlier in August to get as many instructional days in as we can before state testing and AP testing. However, with these calendars, that's not necessarily the case. There's still the same amount of instruction time built in. There's just a lot of breaks throughout. And I just, I feel as if right now, going through the levy, there's already a lot of, just a lot of emotions that are high. There's, we have high pay to play right now, and now we're cutting into, I think, a lot of people's summers, and I don't think the community is going to be very happy. So I cannot support either of these calendars at this time.
Anybody else have any more comments?
I was just gonna say it's not if someone votes yes or no, it's not a ding, but I still believe there's a process, and the process, how we follow. Also have received feedback from the community about the calendars, and I just worry about, also about the breaks, especially if we've looked at like the breaks with like younger groups, about being off schedule, like spring break, they're off Good Friday, you come back for a week of school, and then we're off a week. So is that a good practice for like kindergarten, first grade, that, you have breaks, that you don't have this routine established? Those were some of my questions, that I just didn't understand the thought process, and families struggle with daycare, for time off, with days off. The Thanksgiving break, people reached out that they couldn't find sitters for their children, that they weren't people that went on vacation, they couldn't afford it, but then they had to take off because they didn't have anybody to watch their children. Just some of those kind of things. It's more about that than necessarily, it's like against something.
Right,
It's
I
just
get you.
those questions.
Yep. Anybody else? Mr. Kleinfelder, do you have anything?
Well, I'm super excited that we actually have 2-year calendars now that will roll over, so that people that, working people that have to pick their vacation time by seniority or something and have to do it 6 months to a year in advance can actually know that what the start and stop date of school, not only next year, but the following year.
Right.
So it gives some of those working people that have that kind of some choices. I think the number of student days and work days are similar to what they've been in the past. I don't care about the breaks because I don't work them. It's fine with me, but I'm super excited about it being 2 years out, at least knowing start and stop times so that people can make long-term plans. I think it's ridiculous that a $30 million corporation doesn't know what the first day of work is going to be 2 years out. And finally we have it. So if we can keep doing that now and do 2 next year and the next year, we should know for a long time ahead of time. So hopefully we can keep doing that, but we'll see.
Gotcha. Mr. Chanel, do you have any questions?
I do not.
No questions. With that being said, Mrs. Logan, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Schnell?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter?
Yes.
Mrs. Hayes?
No.
Mrs. Webb?
No.
Mr. Van Winkle?
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to treasurer's reports and recommendations. The floor is yours, Mrs. Logan.
Thank you. We have items that are normal items. You're going to see an investment report, treasure report. Unfortunately, we have another then and now for you to approve, as well as donations for you to approve. I would like to block A through D and then ask for a separate approval of the resolution to proceed with the tax levy.
Okay. With that being said, can we get a motion, a first A through D under treasurer's reports and recommendations?
Motion.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Chanel, Mrs. Hayes, sorry. Okay, go ahead, Mrs. Logan.
Mr. Schnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter?
Yes.
Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Van Winkle?
Yes. And now we are to E, under treasurer's reports and recommendations. Could we have a first to approve letter E under reports and recommendations from the treasurer?
Motion.
Mr. Chanel. Can we have a second?
Motion.
Mrs. Hayes, could you please call the roll? Mrs.
Mr.
Logan?
Schnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter?
Yes.
Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Van Winkle?
Yes. Okay, we move on to legislative report. And Mrs. Webb is our new legislative liaison, so
Me.
thank you for taking on that
Nice.
responsibility, Mrs. Webb.
So just a couple things that have transpired over really the last 8 days, I guess, that's been introduced, just some bills into the Senate. One being Senate Bill 1. It was introduced, all these actually, on the 11th. One is to rename the Department of Education as the Department of Education and Workforce, and to create a position of Director of Education and Workforce, and reform the functions and responsibilities of the State Board of Education and the Superintendent of Public Instruction. So they're still navigating those waters at the state level. The other one, a couple more, is it was also introduced to Senate Bill 11, is to enact the Parental Education Freedom Act to expand the eligibility for educational choice scholarships, to cease the operations of the Pilot Project Scholarship Program, and to increase the income tax credit for homeschooling. So how does that impact us? Like, I think about the voucher system and things of that nature that we've kind of been talking about over the last several years. Another one that was introduced to the Senate is Senate Bill 14, and that is teachers without licenses, and that's to expand eligibility for veterans of the United States Armed Services to be employed as teachers. So navigating those waters and putting people to work, and an alternative pathway to get those folks into the workforce if they want to teach. And the last one that's going to impact us, and I just learned about this, actually I believe it was last Friday, is Aaron's Law, and that passed bipartisan last week. It's not been signed into law yet, but if Governor DeWine signs it, it's Senate Bill 288 right now, it will require schools to provide K through 6 students annual developmentally appropriate instruction in child sexual abuse prevention. And Heather, I forget who would be responsible for that curriculum and teaching that curriculum.
It's conjunction, it's police-led.
Okay.
So Butler County, so we're on the safety committee. That's where we learned of this, and that the police would have, it's more of their realm and teaching. My husband is obviously police, people know that, and has been an advocate of child abuse, like prevention and sex crimes against children and child homicide for 28 years, and they are working with Hamilton City Schools, like, to start figuring out when this law comes in, and it's like we could not reinvent the wheel, like looking to see how this will what would they have to teach, what they teach, it's still kind of gray, and that Butler County ECS is aware of it, and so we'll contact like Ross Township and
Gotcha.
police and us and
Okay.
go from
And-
there.
And I believe we are the 37th state to adopt this, so it's already happening elsewhere. It took a few years.
And there was like a K-7 through 12, like an assessment, like how to identify, like, not just sex trafficking, but child abuse, like warning signs, like if your classmate maybe has bruises, like maybe tell your teacher. I'm just, like, I don't know exactly what it is, but something more along that line through 7 through 12, but there was K through 6.
That's all. That's all I got.
Awesome. Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Webb? It's early in the legislative. I'm sure it'll start getting busier and busier. Next, we'll have the Butler Tech report. Mr. Kleinfelder is our new Butler
This
Tech rep.
past Tuesday, Butler Tech held their first meeting of the year and their organizational meeting. Brett Guido from Monroe was voted in as president. Jim Detzel from Northwest as vice president. There were no no presentations or no public participation at this meeting. One item of interest was that they received a single donation of $1 million piece of equipment for adult ed. A company somewhere in Fairfield is, now that the pandemic has kind of died down, they donated a mask making machine that had a value of over $1 million.
Wow.
So if you need a mask in the future, Butler Tech Adult Ed, they got a machine that be able to make PPE masks pretty cheaply. I also handed out to the board, and you should have probably gotten a digital copy of the student success paper. In here on page 5, Caleb Broughton, a Ross student, is highlighted. He is going to be the first meal at Cafe Lee next Wednesday and Thursday with an Italian dinner. I don't have the menu. Mr. Martin sent it out today. They didn't have it finalized on Tuesday, but I guess Caleb's got it together, and it's going to be an Italian deal with tiramisu for a dessert, 3-course dinner, soup and salad if you choose to go that way. If you haven't had a chance to go to Cafe Lee for lunch on Wednesdays and Thursdays during second semester, it's a very good value, and the food is excellent. So Ross student Caleb Broughton will be the chef in charge on those 2 days. And then upcoming events, May 3rd, they got their showcase night from 4 to 7, where all the seniors will showcase all of their projects and activities for the school year. And then the reminder senior ceremony is the Cintas Center on May 15th. And that's all I have for this first meeting.
I don't know who can organize this. I know Amy organized it before, but if Chad or Jenny or somebody, on the 25th and 26th is the cafe for the Ross kid, right?
Right.
Yeah. It would be really, I think Amy, we went last year or the year before?
So Steve and I reservation for Thursday, 11 o'clock. There's 2 empty seats if anybody wants to go.
Yeah, I wouldn't
So
mind going,
Thursday,
yeah.
the 26th,
Yeah.
I think,
At 11?
11 o'clock. There are 2 empty
Anybody
seats.
else? Because you have to have
Drop me off
reservations.
something.
I'll be in Florida.
You'll be in Florida.
I'll be
Andy has to
working.
work, Heather has to work.
Just drop it off at the hospital.
We'll let you know how good the food is.
I wouldn't mind, I wouldn't mind
On your
going
way
if there
back.
is an extra seat.
Yeah, we got 4 spots.
You guys are going, you said the 12th.
The 26th to
26th,
27th.
Thursday.
Come on.
You guys want to go?
It is so good.
Maybe it'll be a snow day.
Is
What
that your
did-
plan, Bill?
Before we go to board comments, Mr. Kleinfelder, could you, what was the first meal at your first meeting on Tuesday that was prepared by the students?
They had penne pasta with shrimp and sausage, some cheesecake for dessert, garlic knots.
Let the public know that you
Prepared
did not
by
have.
the kids.
Yeah, the public know you did not
Excellent.
take the cheesecake, which is
Excellent. I
crazy.
did not eat the cheesecake. I don't like cheesecake, but everybody said it was really good.
Yeah. Gonna miss that part. We'll go around the table for board does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kleinfelder for Butler Tech? Sorry. Okay, Mrs. Webb, do you want to go board comments?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Mrs. Hayes?
I just want to say that these are adorable, and and can't wait to read them.
All the thank
All the
you-
little
yeah,
thank
yeah.
yous, like this one says, I mean, I work with kids and I know how they talk, but I could just see them working, like board appreciation. Oh, and then thanks for being a Ross Ram. Oh, just thank you.
Mr. Chanel?
Just thank Mr. Richards for his presentation and discussion in the work session today, and Ms. Logan as well for what she presented. Also, just, we approved the new millage for the May vote tonight, and, you know, we've been, as a group, and Chad's team and everybody else have been poring over cuts that we have to make, and we've made a lot of cuts over the last couple years. And I would just, if we can't get it passed in May, the cuts that are coming will fundamentally change this district. And it pains me to say that, and there's stuff that's even hard to talk about cutting, but it is what it is, and that's where we're at. So we really need a strong push for the next couple months to get this levy passed. That's all I have.
Mr. Kleinfelder?
Ditto on that, yeah, we got 13 weeks till election time, we gotta get it passed, because it's not gonna be pretty if it doesn't, and state oversight is not something anybody's looking forward to. I'd also like to thank the kids for all the cards. Some of them are personally addressed to other board members. I'll be sure to pass those out. But
this
it's
is
pretty
what-
awesome. Thanks for the $300 gift card from whoever that was. I'd also like to say thanks, and sometimes we don't take time to recognize the donors here. I just popped open the list. It's rare, and I can't remember the last time. We have a five-figure donation as part of the Noah Fisher Scholarship from the Catholic Foundation. So I thought that was kind of impressive, that, and there's several other four-figure donations there, but a very long list, and, you know, hopefully scholarship will go to several students.
And it's been 2 meetings in a row that we've seen a list of donations for that scholarship, so,
It's growing.
yeah.
It's amazing, yeah.
That's all I got.
Awesome, yep. I have no
And
more.
thanks, Mr. Richard, for his
Yeah.
presentation. I think it was 2 minutes over the time limit, but.
We don't have exact dates on certain things for the levy, but I know there's going to be some public opportunities. At some point, we'll probably announce those in the next month or two, I guess, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, with that being said, Mrs. Logan, could you please call the roll?
Do you have a motion and a second to
Oh, I'm
adjourn?
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Do we have a first? I'm already locked in.
You're
looking at the
ready.
Kentucky Scholarship.
Motion.
Can we get a first? Mrs. Hayes, a second, Mr. Chanel.
Mrs. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Schnell?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter?
Yes.
Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Van Winkle?
Yes, thank you, sorry
I
about
thought
that.
maybe I just missed.